The largest wars in the history of humanity, the weapons used in these wars were deadly and had a huge impact as well. Wars were not limited to just treaties and words of commitment of the renowned world leaders back in the 20th century. The rulers took every step necessary to establish the rule over the inferior countries. In today's video, we are going to tell you the difference between the deadliest weapons of World War I and II. The First World War is often referred to as the Great War, the European War, and the War of the Nations. From 1914 to 1918, most of the battles were fought in Europe. The Central Powers made up of Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Turkey, and the Allies made up of France, Britain, Russia, Japan, Italy, and subsequently the United States fought each other. The murder of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria by Serbian nationalists served as its catalyst. Thus, Austria allies Hungary invaded their adversaries, sparking one of the two biggest wars in history. When the war came to a conclusion in 1990, Germany accepted responsibility for starting it in the Treaty of Versailles. As a result, Austria-Hungary was divided into various states, and Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, and Poland gained their independence from Russia. Additionally, the League of Nations was established as a result. On the other side, World War II, usually referred to as the Second World War, took place from 1939 and 1945. There were a lot of civilian and military casualties for all the participating nations during its 6-year duration. Germany, Italy, and Japan compromised the Axis powers, while the United States, Britain, France, the Soviet Union, and China made up the Allies. With the Nazis' genocidal campaign against the Jewish people, it was the most horrific war ever. Weapons were like part of the soldier's body during the war. As time passes, the technology of weapons changed drastically. Tanks, planes, guns, and other kinds of weapons have changed if we compare these two different wars. Both wars shaped the future polity of many nations, but the question here is how to compare the deadliest weapons of World War I and World War II, which actually made them barbaric. So let's go ahead with World War I. Barbed wire. The invention that was created to safeguard cattle, but was almost immediately put to use in the military. Léonce Grassin Beldans received a patent for a type of barbed wire fencing in 1860s in France. But American farmer Joseph F. Gladden of Illinois is credited with creating barbed wire as we know it today. He created something out of necessity, although both required a lot of labor and time to build and were costly for a poor farmer. You could employ a hefty post or rock fence. The strategy involved stringing together two twisted wire strands with evenly spaced, sharpened barbs. There could be no animal escape thanks to the knotted strands. Armed forces were interested in the innovation since it was affordable and could be produced in large quantities. It was utilized in all significant conflicts at the turn of the 20th century, and the machine guns were far less effective in the absence of barbed wire. Barbed wire continued to be used throughout World War II to protect defensive positions because its thick armor and wide treads could easily smash through it. But the development of one of the deadliest weapons of the conflict put an end to its reign as one of the most dreaded tools on the battlefield. After World War I, the use of barbed wire drastically decreased. During World War I, the next deadliest weapon would be just developing: the airplane. Man sensed the potential for conflict almost as soon as powered flight was invented, but it would take a few years for that potential to be fully realized. The invention of a quick, movable platform that provided its pilot a bird's-eye perspective of the battlefield proved to be an absolute game-changer. Prior to the airplanes, armies relied on mounted scouts or even hot air balloons to conduct reconnaissance. In-depth tactical information could be obtained on the enemy's back lines as well as their front lines, which was crucial information the artillery corps could use to destroy supply depots and command centers that weren't visible to scouts on the ground or flying from stationary balloons. The First Battle of Marne demonstrated the importance of the aeroplanes as a military tool, highlighting the need for contemporary warfare to protect one's own skies against invading aircrafts. Engineers on both sides of the conflict attempted to create weapons that could be mounted on an aircraft to shoot down opposing aircrafts. The Germans utilized this idea fully. By the end of the conflict, the airplane had emerged as one of the most significant developments in military technology. Poison gas. The second deadliest weapon, which still haunts humanity today and inspired international action to outlaw its use in future battles. While sometimes it was odorless and undetectable, and other times it was preceded by a stick-like yellow fog that was floating over the countryside in your direction. It was indiscriminate and would ultimately result in the same manner of death for everyone. One of the worst World War I weapons, according to many, was poison gas. France was the first country to use tear gas against Germans because it was mild irritant and would make people cry uncontrollably and have trouble breathing before going away for 30 minutes. Chlorine gas was first used by Germany in 1915 against the Allied lines. The gas would settle on low spots and move along the ground, since it is thicker than air, making it ideal for slipping into enemy trenches and murdering the soldiers within. Since it produces HCl acid when exposed to it, its initial use resulted in the death of 1,100 soldiers. Due to its color, mustard gas was the most frequently used gas in World War I. These gases caused chemical burns that hindered fighting, brought on major infections, and ultimately resulted in death. Gases like chloropicrin, which could circumvent gas masks and cause violent coughing and vomiting episodes, would be utilized in battle as well. To your surprise, the Hague Agreement of 1899 banned gases, yet it had no lethal consequences. Despite being just slightly more lethal than regular guns, gases only caused about 2% of all the deaths in World War I. They were a terrifying weapon that was incredibly effective in severely demoralizing the opposition. The Geneva Protocol of 1925 again outlawed the use of gas as a weapon. The Western power did not utilize gas during the Second World War. Japan utilized deadly gases only against Chinese and other Asian forces because they were inferior to them and lacked the technology to produce such gases on their own, and because it feared retaliation from the West. Additionally, we must inform you that Germany did not employ deadly gases since its militarily lacked the advanced technology necessary to make poison gas for use on the battlefield. The First World War also gave rise to the subsequent lethal weapon, tanks. Nazi Germany used it fatally, while others struggled to use it. September 1916 marked the introduction of tank combat. On a crisp fall morning, a tiny collection of enormous armored behemoths made their way to the front at a slow 4 miles per hour. German onlookers were shocked when the enormous metal creature started their protracted, slow trek. Nothing could stop the enormous death robots, not even rifle or machine gun fire, which proved to be entirely worthless. As combustion engines gained strength, even heavier machines could be propelled by them. Armored cars became more popular as a result, but because they could only travel on roadways, they were worthless in the trench fighting of World War I. In order to break the stalemate of trench warfare, the British started to re-examine the fundamental idea of an armored car. The finished product would be known as tank, which was given as a code name to conceal the true purpose of the top-secret British project. Instead of having turret-mounted armaments like those we see today, the ponderous beast had side-mounted cannons and machine guns that could fire down into the trenches from above. They also had tracks that completely ringed their bodies, allowing them to just drive straight over them. Early tanks were vulnerable to artillery fire due to their incredibly slow speed, but their thick armor rendered it impervious to any form of small weapons fire. There were 8 people working on the tank commander, the driver, 4 gunners, and 2 people who aided with gear shifting. Massive engine at the center of the machine could potentially suffocate the crew due to improper ventilation. When the engine raises the temperature within the tank to intolerable levels, the situation worsens. Without suspension, the large hefty animal would ride incredibly rough and be extremely difficult to control. In spite of all that, tanks were used right away in 1916 for an assault on the German fortifications. Outside the French village of Flers, the British forces used 49 tanks. Tanks were an essential component of any modern military during the Second World War, and strong competition between the opposing sides resulted in the development of tanks with improved weapons. So, do let us know which topic we should cover next. If you enjoyed the content, give us a like, and thank you for subscribing to our channel. See you in the next one. Bye bye.